Okay, we're recording. Hi, everybody. I'm here with two other bereaved parents, and we're here to tell you what we really think about Thomas John, the real truth. Today is March 24th, 2019, and Linda, if you would like to go first and tell everyone your thoughts and opinions of Thomas John.
Well, I personally love Thomas John. I have validations here that are not on the internet. There's no way that anybody could find them. It's just that simple. So, and I had so many that I had to write them down because they're 2 pages. So it isn't something like, oh, there's 2 or 3 or 4. I have a lot, and I'd like to share them with you if I could. The first one is, I met Thomas, I will say, I was taking his classes, and my son Sean popped in at the very end, and Thomas said a couple of things which really, and I'd not had a reading at that point, but he said, your son is laughing and he talks about you sleeping on his pillows. Well, nobody would know that but myself. And my husband doesn't even know that I sleep on Sean's pillows. So he said he was laughing about that. He said he also was talking about your 2 tattoos. One, an elephant, is bigger than you thought. Now, I will say on my page, I have a picture of one tattoo, which is on my finger, but I've never shown the elephant tattoo. Nobody could find that picture of me with an elephant tattoo. And also, it was bigger than I expected after it was done. I still love it though. He talked about San Francisco, and he said, I don't know if you visited San Francisco, but he keeps talking about San Francisco. I had just come back from San Francisco a week before that. So again, I hadn't discussed that. This kind of blew me away. So he said, your son is talking about you buying real estate. And I said, no, nope. And he said, no, he said, you're gonna buy a piece of real estate. And I just laughed and I said, okay, but no, that's not gonna happen. So fast forward to 3 weeks ago, I bought a timeshare in Sarasota, Florida. So, and that was never on my radar. It was a spontaneous thing that I ended up buying at the last minute. So, and I told Thomas, nope, not happening. Well, he was right. I did buy real estate. He talked about a little boy named after my son, and I do have a grandson who has Sean's middle name. He talked about signs. He said, a bird. Have you had a bird that's been around recently? Well, I've had a roadrunner that has been in my backyard, on my roof, and as I was writing it, and I'm in a casita, I looked out and the roadrunner was in my courtyard, just hanging out. So I was like, okay, that's the bird. He talked about his sneakers, and he said primarily his running shoes. He said his running shoes are next to yours in the closet, and they are. I keep his running shoes right next to mine. Again, no one would know that unless you're in my closet, and then we've got a problem. He talked about nicknames, and he said he's talking about Gigi, which is the nickname of a family member, and he talked about Pop. Pop is the nickname for his dad. So I thought that, again, not on the internet. Then my father came in. He said, your dad is here. He said he passed a long time ago, which he did. He said he's talking about you wearing your son's dog tags, which I do. I've got his dog tags on right here. So again, no one would know that. He talked about a miscarriage that I had 30 years ago. Wow. And he said, I just want to let you know that your other son, my other grandson is with me. So, and I miscarried a little boy 33 years ago. He talked about military service. Now, you could find that out. Sean was in the military. But he said he's talking about a lot of pictures at his service, one in particular of you and him in Paris. And he and I had gone to Paris while he was in college, and that picture was at his service. He said you have a very deep spiritual connection with him, more than just a mother-son, which is absolutely true. He said you're writing a book about him, which I did complete. And it's different from the previous book that I wrote, which is they're night and day. So that was absolutely true. And he also mentioned a gold college ring. He said, you have it. And it's sitting actually right next to his urn. So all of these things that he brought through were not anything that you could find except for the military connection. You couldn't find it on the internet. So I'm absolutely 100% convinced that, he was talking to my loved ones in spirit, no doubt.
Wow, that's so awesome. And through those validations, Linda, I know you are a licensed therapist. I also know, obviously, the grief journey is horrific, especially with a child. How did all these validations help you?
Well, first of all, I am a metaphysician, so I'm board certified metaphysician. But it's so, I know that term has been used before, like salve for the soul or salve for your heart. Even though we know, and I've studied the afterlife for over 20 years. I didn't know why, but I have. I've had this interest in the afterlife for many, many years. And so I know that we don't die. I know that just the vehicle, the physical body does. But even with that, having Thomas bring through, and it was like having a phone call with my son. It was having, when I finished the call, I was on such a high. It was like I just had this conversation with Sean. And it really does help so much in the healing. And then I can take that and help others. That's the gift, is that I can come from a place of knowing versus speculating or guessing, or it's a knowing. It's an absolute knowing. And I thank Thomas for that.
Oh, that's just beautiful. Beth, I'm gonna let you talk about your experience with Thomas. I would also like to tell you that Beth is very left brain individual. She is a retired or soon to be retired colonel from the Air Force. And she's had incredible reading from Thomas, and I'd like her to talk about it. You need to mute yourself. You're muted.
That doesn't work, does it? I'm Beth West, and my son Tyler transitioned 4 years ago. And like Linda, I got a lot of validations from Thomas that aren't found on the internet. I mean, some can be found, but there are some that just are not on the internet. First, I never even had a Facebook account until my son transitioned. And I really just don't post very much. But some of the things that he gave me were younger male, okay, that's no big thing, but he said he's coming in and he's saluting. So is there a tie to the military? And I said, yes, me, his dad, his stepdad, 2 of his grandfathers were in the service. And later he actually specifically said Air Force, which I was in the Air Force, his stepdad was in the Air Force, his grandfather and his father, all retired Air Force. I guess you could probably find some of that, but to put all that together, I just don't see it. I mean, his grandfather retired from the Air Force so many years ago. He talked about the method of his passing, which he knows, Tyler knows, is a very painful thing for me, and brought through some messages about that I needed to hear. Like his intention was never to hurt you. And, he didn't want to cause you any pain, and he's sorry about that, which are things that I think about quite often. he also got some very specific names, just like Linda talked about. William Bill, that's my grandfather, and Billy. Okay, so those are two separate names. Billy is my father, who has passed away. My grandmother, Macy, which is not on the internet anywhere. His great-grandfather, Leon, and he also got ages of these people. So he said Leon is a very elderly gentleman, and he was 104 when he passed. And the name Leon cannot be found anywhere. He said Amy, which is my sister. He said Jane, grandmother, which is his dad's mother. He talked about two of my friends who have also lost children. And these are friends I didn't meet until after losing children. You know, that's how we met, was through those organizations. He brought up Sue, which is a friend of mine, and Gavin, which is her son, which is a very unusual name. And Gavin had a message to his mom over a very relevant subject that we had all been talking about very recently with his daughter, with her granddaughter. He also came up with the name Michael, which Michael was a friend of mine, a coworker of mine, and he passed away about 3 years ago. And then just a few minutes later, he said Tony. Well, Tony is Michael's mother, and he passed the message to her as well. He talked about very specific sneakers that Tyler used to wear, which are black and gray checkered sneakers. He wore Vans, and the significant about these Vans is my niece got married recently, and she had those shoes and one of Tyler's hats sitting in a chair to represent him. So that is what the shoes were about. And he said, and he doesn't just have one pair, he had lots of pairs, and that is so true. He got 3 for Christmas that year. He talked about a necklace that I wear that's very heavy in gold. Okay, now people can wear necklaces, but to talk that it's heavy in gold, you know, it's a cremation necklace with Tyler's ashes in it. He also talked about a bracelet that I wore in his honor. Well, we had been to Dominica, which is the country Dominica, and had been out hiking, and I lost my bracelet. It's an angel bracelet in pink, which is October birthstone, which my son was born in October. And I went to the hotel and told them I had lost my bracelet. I thought I would never see it again. A week later, they called and had found my bracelet. Now that is extremely significant.
Wow.
Talked about a trip. You're going on a trip soon. Well, unbeknownst to Thomas, I was on a trip when I had this call. He talked about Cancun or something with the beach. And I said, yeah, we're in the Caribbean. And later he said, do you ever go to Turks and Caicos? And did you ever go to Turks and Caicos with your son? And I said, that's where I am now. And he talked about scuba diving. Do you ever go scuba diving? And I said, that was one of the big memories that we had, was we went scuba diving on Christmas Day one time in Turks and Caicos. So he had so many validations that can't be found anywhere. He had to get those from Tyler. So I was trying to see if there's anything. Oh, he asked about a young female that has been having a really hard time since my son transitioned. And I said, oh, it's got to be my niece. They were first cousins, but they were both only children. So they were more like brother and sister. And he said, Tay? Who's Tay? And I said, that's my niece. He said, I want to say Tay Tay. I love Tay Tay. And that's what he always called her, was Tay Tay. Her name is Taylor. So, I mean, just incredible validations. And, oh, he said, who is Jim? Jim is my husband, Tyler's stepfather. And he wanted to talk about how the relationship, he now sees that in a different light, you know, how teenagers are. They butt heads with their parents a little bit. And he really looks up to his stepfather and learned a lot from him. So just very validating. And I think that's probably enough for right now. there's more, but
Beth, I had a reading with Thomas. He actually did a complimentary reading for me, and he does donate a great deal of his time. One of his special people are our parents. He did an incredible reading for me about my son Eamon. Talked about, University of Alabama, of course. If anybody knows anything about me and Eamon, that's where Eamon went to school, where he was president at his fraternity. But something that you made me think of during the reading, he said, "Who is John?" And I said, "That's my stepfather." And he said, "Well, Eamon and John are together." And he said, John loved to fish. John fished every single day. As a matter of fact, he passed while he was fishing. And he said, John loved cigars. He could smell cigars. And I guess my point to this is, I hardly post on Facebook, but if anybody would look at my Facebook, it's only about my son now. But as far as John passed about 10 years ago. There's nothing that would indicate anything about him. And Thomas's ability with names is incredible. I have never seen a medium be able to get the names like Thomas gets. But I also want to ask you, after your reading, how did it help you?
seeing all the validations that I got, including names that I know he could never get on the internet, like my grandmother Macy, his Tyler's great grandfather Leon. It helps you know that it's real, because your mind wants to somehow rationalize these things. Oh, well, maybe this happened and maybe this happened. But with stuff like that, information like he gave on the names and the fact that we were on vacation and Turks and Caicos, scuba diving, it can't be found anywhere. So it has to be real. So it really helps me to understand, and like Linda said, to know that it's real.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And one thing Linda said when we were chatting before we started recording is, we know there are people who, no matter what, don't believe in mediums, wouldn't believe in any mediums, and it's just how they are. And we all know that. But for those of people who believe in mediums, but then think that Thomas isn't for real, I just think it's a character attack. I think that, they have not had a reading. They haven't had someone change their life. And, I've had enough readings that I know who's good and I know who's amazing. Thomas's gift is beyond incredible. So in closing, if each one of you just want to say one last closing of anything, I think that would be wonderful. Linda?
Well, I will say this, and I will not say who it was, but I was gifted a 5-minute reading the other day, just out of the blue. And I would say the validations were about 40% correct. And it made me, and this is a medium who is certified. I mean, he truly is gifted, and I'm very blessed to have had a reading with him.
That's just amazing. Beth?
Yeah, I agree with Linda. I think Thomas is probably about 99% accurate, and that's more than any other medium I have ever talked to. The one thing that he did tell me, and it was the most incredible thing that he said to me the whole day, and I forgot to mention it earlier, he said, "Your son is saying to me, I'm sorry about that time I went on your bed and scared you." So Tracy, you know this story, but
I
not many
know
people
this story.
story.
I remember this story.
I had, and it's certainly not written down anywhere. I had traveled, and I was in a hotel room by myself, and I had been asking Tyler to come visit me, talking to spirit, and praying that he would come visit me. And at 3 a.m, he sat on the end of my bed, and the bed went down. You know how if a real human, physical body human sits on the end of your bed, and it scared me so bad that I couldn't get out from under the covers. I put the covers over my head. Of course, then I felt really bad because I knew it was him. I knew I was awake because I got up for the rest of the night. And Thomas brought that up. Now, how would he know that? It's embarrassing to be that scared, number one. So why would you talk about it to anybody?
And I can validate that Beth told me that story, and she kept, saying, I don't know why I was so scared. And really nobody probably but us knew that. And he brought that up. How else would anybody know?
They wouldn't. Just like Linda's shoes in her closet.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, those are true evidential connections. I mean, there's no way I would never post, oh, by the way, I have these shoes and I have running shoes in my closet. It'd be a big deal. And how would he know I'm a runner anyway? Because I don't post that either. So yeah, like I said, I think his gift is amazing, and yeah, his validations were, as Beth said, over 90%. So, and I think the one of the biggest things for me was the real estate, because I was like, okay, well, he's pretty accurate, but he didn't get that one right, and darn if he didn't. Like, I just didn't know I was going to buy real estate, but Thomas knew. So there you go.
And I can also say, we're 3 moms who coincidentally all have boys in spirit, but we would never speak out on someone's behalf if, if we didn't truly believe this, because actually the 3 of our missions as part of honoring our son is to help other parents. We actually are helping other parents. So we wouldn't be saying this, just in support of someone. We're doing it honestly because at least me personally, I am deeply, deeply saddened by the skepticism of Thomas and the way he helped so many people. I know we're always going to have skeptics. I'm very skeptical. But when you have something that you know to be true and you're willing to share it, I think that's a whole different picture that we're showing.
No, I agree. And I do think that we're all intelligent women, and there's nothing wrong with being an open-minded skeptic. I think that's important. But again, when you have validations as personal, who would know that, Tyler's sitting on Beth's bed, unless there's a camera in there, there's no way. So all of these things just, prove that it's real. We're not making it up. We're not doing this as, trying to convince anybody. These are our stories. And that's all we're doing, is just sharing our truth.
That's so true, Linda. And one thing that if you haven't experienced the loss of a child, you don't deal with crap very well. Is that a nice way of putting it? I have no reason to lie. There's no reason for me. I don't gain anything from lying except to help other, I don't gain anything from lying, period. But by saying this, our truth, we are just trying to help other people. And we would never say to go to someone who we truly didn't think would help you.
Correct.
Right. And really we're not saying it for business or anything else. We're saying it for validations of how good and what a gift Thomas
Exactly.
has. And he's using the gift in the right way to help so many people heal.
Exactly. And that's really what it's all about. Right.
Right. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate it so very
That's
much,
great.
and I hope everyone learns a little bit from us.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.